see the comment or okay, well, we're live right now. You see the button. Are you on your computer?
I am.
So do you know how to open up another tab? Because we can
Yep.
share this on your. So open up another tab. You can either go to Facebook or YouTube.
Okay.
Um, I would say Facebook, and then
Okay.
we're going to be streaming live on the Bow Wow Bill page. So let me. And while I share that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream. We're going to figure out how Behesha can share this on her page as well, or you can just view it if you don't want to share it too. All right, there we are. I'll tag you. Whoops. Thank you, sweetie. Let me see if I can tag you in this. I think I can. Might have to share it on my personal page and then tag you. How's that?
Well, we'll figure it out. We can just go for now. That's okay.
Well, while I do this, well, I mean, let's figure it out because I think you're somebody that people need to know and listen to. Okay, we are live and with Behesha. There we go. So I'm going to tag you in it.
Okay.
Share now. So you should be tagged. So you should see the little notification there. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream here. I am here with Behesha Doan. It's so good to see you, Behesha Doan. So
Good to see you.
and we just had this. So good to see you, Behesha. It's been a long time. This is Kashi. Do you know Kashi?
Yeah. Hi, Kashi.
For all the way across the world in India.
Yeah.
Let us know where you guys are watching from. We have England in the house. Afternoon from the UK, so it's afternoon. So maybe I should do some more of these early morning live streams for me because it's
Well, there you go.
yep, we have people all over the world watching this. That's what's so cool about these live streams is you put them
Uh,
out there, and the vast majority of the people watch these after we go live. But what's cool about when we're live is that we can actually have interaction from people in the audience. And so if you guys have any questions, comments for us, well, but first and foremost, make sure you share this. And I have been doing a lot more activity on my Patreon page. And so if you guys like what I do and if you want to support me financially for as little as $5 a month, check me out on Patreon. I'll put a link to my Patreon page in the comments down below. And for all of you that already support me on Patreon, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we are streaming live now to Facebook, YouTube, and X. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube page, please consider doing so. It looks like the vast majority of the people are starting to watch this over on YouTube, where it
ah,
used to be primarily on Facebook. So it's cool to see the evolution of social media. Do you want to give everybody a quick introduction of who you are and what you're all about, Behesha?
well, I am Behesha Doan. I'm the founder and the program director and the training director of Disabled Veteran. And Disabled Veteran is a program that trains service dogs for military veterans living with trauma. And this program is unique in that we have the development of the service dogs, but also that we have a trauma resilience program that was developed and very unique in the industry. So that's what we do. And I've been at this 43 years now in service dog in training, just period training and period. I was a horse trainer before I was a dog trainer. And
Well,
so,
look, can you see the screen here
oh,
too?
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, it looks like mostly labs. Are you guys training?
There's a lot of labs. We've trained Goldens, we've trained Poodles, we've trained Shepherds, we've trained Doberman. So, and it's really through trial and error, Bill, that we,
Hmm.
um, that's not completely up to date, by the way, but yes,
Okay.
it's a great reference. Um, we've, we've learned a lot over all these years, and which breeds are more successful, which ones we've discovered that there are certain areas that we feel wouldn't necessarily work out in regard to someone living with this particular set of traumas. So yeah, there's a lot to know, and I can tell you there's a lot that I didn't know when I got started, and so it's been an evolution.
I was there when you started. Do you remember that way back in
I
ICP
do.
2011? And so that's why I hold you in a very high regard. And we spoke earlier a little bit. What's up, Tom? I have Tom from Boise, Idaho, joining us. Doing a little hang loose here. And we did talk about the things you did wrong.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that's beautiful about speaking with people that have been in this industry for a long time. And that's what I encourage. We have a lot of young trainers that watch
Oh
this.
yeah.
And you guys, if you can borrow our scars, if you can learn from the mistakes that we've made, we're doing a couple things. First off, we're taking the pain that we have experienced through the mistakes that we have made and allowing you not to experience them yourselves. And learning from our mistakes is like alchemical gold, I guess, like turning into like emotional gold, I should say, not alchemical, but emotional gold. Because if we didn't do this for nothing, and if somebody learned by the mistakes that we made, then that's going to help us as professionals, because it sucks to make these mistakes, man. And
Oh yeah.
you look at the situation, and especially service dog work, and especially when we're dealing with trauma, when we're dealing with emotional needs, what are some issues that can come up if you make these mistakes, Behesha?
This is
Like
going to
what?
require glasses for me to read any notes that I've got.
Okay,
Uh,
it's okay, I won't judge you. Here, look it, I got mine too.
oh, good. Now, so some of the biggest challenges that we had in this process was what we could afford to do as a new not-for-profit. There are great things that you can do, but can you afford to do it? And so there were dogs that we selected that, not knowing, we did not realize that there would be things such as what I refer to as emergent behaviors. Emergent behaviors are behaviors that do not emerge until the dog is sexually and socially mature. And of course, you can neuter a dog, but the body still matures. So even if they're, sometimes people say, well, he's not sexually mature, he's neutered or she's spayed, but the body continues to mature and the brain continues to mature. And there are some behaviors that do not emerge until perhaps sexual maturity or social maturity, which is later. And then that's where we hear oh my goodness, he has never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
There are some breed characteristics that they're delayed. The dog can look marvelous for a long period of time, and then there can be a shift. So it was in those regards that we invested a lot of time, effort, energy into them, only to have them make a shift that was completely predictable for the breed, but we didn't catch it, we didn't know it at the time. So plenty of research on your parts is invaluable for you. You'll be so glad, because I can assure you there's nothing worse than looking into the face of someone that you have been so desperately trying to help, and now they are emotionally invested in the dog, only to have that dog begin to move farther away from the goal, thus pulling the individual farther away from the help that they need. That's pretty important that we stay attuned all the way along.
Yeah, and it can make the problem worse in a
Yeah.
way, because now we're not just dealing with the PTSD, the emotional damage that has been done
Hmm.
because of the trauma, but now we're dealing with some continued trauma, or just we're just throwing another some fuel on the fire, and we're throwing another variable into the mix.
Yeah, and I
That,
think matching dogs too. I think it's so important the way that we match. Matching isn't as simple as here's a dog and here's an individual. But let's say I have um, a individual who's very, perhaps maybe someone who is um, very guarded. The last thing I would want to do would be to place a dog that was shy and guarded itself in the same place, because we can make matters worse when we say, oh, here's this dog. And they say, yeah, this is great. But now the dog wants to stay home and they're already inclined to stay home. And now they just stay home together.
mm,
That's that sounds like what would work out well. But in reality, both dogs and humans are hardwired for connection. And making connection is how we stay completely healthy. But that's speaking from someone who lives with trauma and has had a history of that. Uh, Being connected to other people that we feel safe and loved around, that's crucial to healthy development and recovery from trauma. And if a dog is also hardwired for connection, but if that connection exists only here and no farther with no other uh, range of connections, that's when you start to see problematic behaviors emerge, and the ability that the individual may have to heal and grow and develop a good filter post trauma is to be able to know that some of the things I think about aren't necessarily going to be true. I can surround myself with community, however large or small, and and remain on the healing journey, because PTSD, if there's, for any way that we describe it, PTSD is hard. It's just hard. It's it causes a great deal of anxiety, a great deal of uh, inner conflict, a great deal of nervous dysregulation and nightmaring, uh, easy to anger, many of those things. And when we are fully connected, when we have an ability to connect again, and you've got a dog that's able to connect with you, now you can go into the world that has uh, a teammate with it. Does that make any sense? Are you picking up what I'm putting down here?
yeah, absolutely, I am. And it's like we can't just melt into the discomfort. We can't just melt into comfort. We can't just stay there. Sometimes we have to get a little bit
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, I've actually had, not just with training service dogs, or just training dogs in general, you're going to be dealing with discomfort and some
Yeah.
whether you're rehabbing dogs that are having some reactivity or whatever. This is um can I audio? Okay, whatever. I'll get to your comments here if you guys have comments or questions. I don't know if I can adjust her audio.
Is
But
it too low or too high?
he says it's too low, but I think it's your old phone audio. Anyway, I want to stay on this topic that I so discomfort is not a bad thing. Like it might feel like it is, and um, it might not be desirable, but your strength is gained in that struggle. And honestly, with PTSD, I don't think that we truly understand it. It is such I mean, it's such an interesting thing that happens to us, and I know that it's an autonomic response based on the trauma that, we have two systems. Our nervous system, our
Right.
amygdala, right, is a fear factory. That's a small almond shaped gland that's in your brain that pumps out polypeptides that locks into our cells. And it's two functions. One, our brain is meant to keep our body in homeostasis,
That's
so
correct.
98.6 degrees, and all of our like enteric nervous system, around our guts, our heart beating, us breathing normally, and all these things are on a subconscious level. Luckily, I'm not like, I need to take another breath. Okay, other people are having fine or do fine with the audio, so I think it's your old phone, Kashi. A good thing I don't have to know about every sphincter that's opening and closing in my guts or anything like that. It just happens. So our body has this
Yeah.
psychocybernetic mechanism that keeps everything functioning. But the other aspect of this is that we have a psychocybernetic that keeps us safe. And these neural networks are built on our experiences. And as we go through life and we experience things that might have been extremely dangerous, um, then our body gets hardwired very quickly. So if you're out on a path running, it's a beautiful forest, and you're just loving that scenery, and you love that run, and then one day you get bit by a snake, and that snake caused a lot of pain, and that snake caused a rattlesnake, so like a dangerous venomous snake. Now, from this point going forward, when you go running, your body is kind of on high alert. And especially when you go running down that particular trail, you're going to manifest on the other system of cold sweats, hair standing on end. Our brain is going to shut down our reasoning capabilities, our ability to discern, and put us more into a fight, flight, or freeze or fawn type of a mechanism. And so this is stuff that is kind of hardwired, and we
Well,
have
it
to work.
needs to be. It needs to be because in, that part of our brain is very old, and the amygdala has also a lot of good emotion. It's
Yes.
that's the emotional seat, right? And so while we all value uh, feeling happy and laughter and all of the good things that come with good emotions, it's the ones that what we have labeled negative actually is just survival reactions. And those need to be there to keep us around long enough that we can go back to happiness and laughter and joy and delight and all of those things. So anatomically, um, it's important that that be there, and why it has such a pronounced register in the body. But at the same time, just like with training dogs, we have to be able to move the dog. All training is done at first in the front brain, where they're responding and learning and connecting and making sense and linking things. Great. But at the same time, training is done in levels. It's like you start out low, there's not too much going on, you develop the dog there. And many training programs actually keep the training at a pretty low level and then wonder what's happened to the dog when the arousal levels go up. And as you go layer by layer, the dog's ability to go back and pull the information that they learned at a lower arousal level they won't have access to that. For example, if we were driving down the street, you and I, Bill, and we're just talking and going along, and a car comes from the other direction, and we just miss being T-boned, right? It's just, and there's suddenly that stall of response. And we're like in the, did you just see that kind of state of mind? In that moment, if you were to turn to me or I to turn to you and say, hey, Bill, what city were you born in? You would go, what?
Yeah.
Unable to process it, right? That's because your brain under that level of auditory, visual exclusion, what just happened, you can't go back and find that information under that level of arousal,
Yeah, you
right?
can't
So
access.
it's access. It's all about access. So the key with anyone living with trauma, as well as dog training, to be able to train the dog in the levels of arousal that continue to escalate. And the neural pathways, we always hear the term set in their ways, we're set in our ways. Those are neural pathways that get set. And so the key is to develop the dog to the point that those neural pathways are traveling from front brain through mid to hindbrain, where things are all real reactive. The dog's, overly startled, totally dysregulated. There's got to be a gradual layering of the training that we do. So the dog has an inroad from front, mid, hind, and all the way back. Sometimes the dog goes to hindbrain, explodes into reaction, and then it's only time that they can come back to the front brain and being able to perform what you have asked. But in
Yes.
absence of the levels of exposure, which I have a note here about, there is a formula for developing resilience via the patterns of stress. And we know for sure, in science, we know for sure that trauma occurs when it is unpredictable, completely unpredictable. You didn't see it coming, you couldn't see it coming. It's extreme. It's not moderate, it's extreme to your system, not anybody else's system, to your system, and it's prolonged. It's longer than your system can tolerate that. That creates a sensitization and a vulnerability in that situation. There is a path through, and I actually emphasize this and go into this a lot, both with dogs, humans, dogs, both, that there is a process to come back out of that by the way that we start the training of the human, the training of the dog. For dogs that have been, not just dogs that have been traumatized, dogs that just get dysregulated easily, they are underexposed perhaps. An understanding of this and how to start with the inroads over here where things are tolerable, and build skill sets that gradually inch over to where they can hold on to that and still come back, because it's just a one-way road, right? It feels like you go from here to there, and then how do I get back? I got to go home. I got to get out of here, right?
Yes.
But there is a process. There is a process, and dogs can make marvelous models for this process, for the benefit of humans and the benefit of the dog. That's because it's got to be both.
Yes. Well, and it also has to be known that even though this process can be helped with the dog and help you realize that there is a way to find your way back
Mm-hmm.
to emotional regularity,
Regulation.
right? That with that being said, that this service dog is a helper to help you do the work.
Exactly so.
Right. This isn't a cure. This dog, because the dog doesn't live as long. This is a temporary step up in your life, and this is
Mhm.
temporary help. But if we think that the dog is going to be the cure, then we're not viewing this relationship in a proper context. This dog is going
Yeah.
to help, but it's going to help you do the work to find your way back to emotional regulation.
Not just emotional regulation, but the ability across, because we can get regulated, we can get back on, you have a few drinks, you whatever, and we
Right.
come back. But the key is to lay down the patterns that cause us to stay in a regulated state, because nobody's in stasis in a regulated state. It's constant. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you're sluggish, you get going, you're hungry. And so we're constantly, it's like adjusting sails
Okay.
on a ship. And the key is that the dog can alert you, but the job is now yours. Now that I know that the needle's starting to move, now it's my responsibility to bat the tennis ball, uh, the other direction. The dog bats this way, we bat that way. And I think the biggest disservice that we can do for anyone or the dog, because the needs are equal, right? The needs it the needs of the dog are exactly as important as the needs of the individual. Um, and when we recognize that the dog cannot save anyone, it can assist. And I think that's the big key, is the word assist. Assisting is different than, I mean, we use the term universally service dog. It's recognized in the law, right?
Right.
Um, the key is that it assists the human to be able to do things that they could not do for themselves. And so if I couldn't see one of my triggers coming and my dog recognized it in me, because part of its training is that he's been taught to look for certain signs, which then go on to become changes in biomarkers in the body that precedes the physical response. Um, the dogs begin to recognize it before I do necessarily. And now my response is, thank you very much. I need to go to work now, and I need to rehearse the skills that I've learned, because it's possible for someone to be really motivated by the idea of change and healing, but not by the hard work that's required, you
Yes.
know. And
And
so
the discomfort that will be
it
present.
will be there. Yeah. It there's discomfort now when you're not working on it, right? There's
Yes.
there's discomfort when you're not doing the hard work. And so it is for dogs. Dogs don't feel good when they're living in reaction. They don't. They feel dysregulated. Feeling at homeostasis, where it's like all is well. Again, that's like sailing a ship. You're constantly adjusting the sails. But I view service dog work and the role that we're putting a dog into, I feel like bringing a dog into the home, or placing the dog in a home, in a setting where the dog's going to be doing this kind of work. The dog absolutely needs to be suited for service work, because so many dogs are shoehorned into a role of service work. They never showed the aptitude. They're just really nice dogs.
Yeah.
Never necessarily showed the aptitude and have the full range of skills that are going to be necessary for them to thrive in that setting. And so, for that reason, there are some dogs that have too much drive. There are some dogs that have too little drive. There are some dogs that never wanted to be in the show in the first place. The key is that we recognize that placing a dog in a service capacity with someone is very, very much like an arranged marriage. In an arranged marriage, the dog didn't get to pick where he ended up And, you transport the dog and he shows up in a brand new world that he has no idea what happens here. And now placed with this individual that he does not know, or maybe even did know them, but now he's being put into a different role. The key is that in an arranged marriage, because that's what it is, the dog didn't pick much of this, that we recognize that the dog's needs are going to matter just as much. They're like a child bride. They couldn't choose.
Yes.
They end somewhere and they're making the best way they can. So when a dog is well placed, one way that you know that the dog is well placed is that depending on what the challenges are, that should present some measure of challenge to the individual you placed it with. The key is how much. And so there should be some measure of challenge that the human then rises to. And both are allowed to grow. It's a challenge, the worst kind of challenge, when the needle starts moving the direction and they're like, you know what? I don't want to go anywhere either. I want to just sit with you here on the couch. We've been here for 6 days and I don't care.
Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, not good for either one. And so, the challenges that are there are to move the needle so that you continually do this.
Yeah, get out of that comfort. We call it a comfort zone for a reason. And essentially we're breaking through this comfort zone. And I see questions piling up, and I'll get to the questions here in just a second. And I think that what you're trying to say is like, look, we're dealing with two sentient beings coming together in an arranged marriage, and in a marriage the two become one. Both have wants and desires that are just as important to each individual, the individual human and the individual dog. And then how do we arrange this marriage where they're both going to get the benefit, and that they challenge each other to grow that comfort zone, to live a healthy life. That in that word healthy, we have the word heal, and to bring about a healing process that's going to allow both of them to exist in the world with a foundational understanding. And maybe I'll come to, do you want to take a couple questions real quick, Behesha?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay. I think we got a couple good ones here. An individual not being in the process of it. I'll come to that one here in just a second. So what are some foundational what are some common foundational trainings of any service dog in its early training, irrespective of the end user requirements? I like that.
That's a good question, Kashi. The thing that I look for is even if at the end of the day, as you said, irrespective of the end user requirements, I look for a dog that can not come heel, sit down, stay. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in building focus. I'm interested in building neutrality, above all, neutrality wherever they are. And that can be developed if you have the genetic stability within the dog, which there are some situations where the dog isn't necessarily all that stable for this kind of work. So I look for neutrality everywhere, Kashi.
Okay. Now, and then on that note, I don't think that people realize the role genetics play with service dog work.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's huge. I did Canines Companions for Independence, and I asked I can't remember if it was a gentleman or a lady right now, but I just remember them saying, I said, what role does genetics play when selecting the dog? And they said 98%.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's huge. And they get their whole batch of dogs from like 4 or 5 dogs, right? And so I get calls all the time as a professional dog trainer of people wanting to take a rescue dog and make them. I got one yesterday, and making them into a service dog, and I have to let them know, look, this is I never see it work because the dog does not have the genetic disposition, the stability, as you were saying, of the focus and neutrality of being okay and being neutral in these many different environments that we're going to be taking the dog into in the human world, that they're not capable of the service dog work. And it's gotten a lot easier as a professional that has been in this industry for 20 some years now, that I can help them understand that. But it's a common misconception I find with people, that they think that just because they love this dog and they want to take them and do a role with them, whether it's emotional or mobility needs, that this dog just isn't capable of that task. Now,
I also see with, excuse me for interrupting, but for
no,
mobility, many dogs are not suited via size.
totally.
Yeah, and someone may say, "Well, I'm not a very big person," but structurally, for this dog, it may not be a good fit at all. There are many things to consider in mobility.
Yes.
On, please.
So we were talking about the sit down, stay, all that stuff.
I get that later. I want
Yeah,
neutrality. I want focus. I
okay.
want the dog to learn how to learn, because
Yes.
communication between dogs is easy. There's almost a universal language that does have some breed informed things that go on. But if the dog has the ability to learn from humans, we have a way of communicating, and the dog learns, this is how I figure things out, and I want a creative dog. I want a dog that learns how to have an interactive exchange with the human that is mutually satisfying.
Yes. And I remember you saying, you asked me the question on our last conversation, would I like a dog? Oh, I can't remember. Do you remember it,
I
Behesha?
do.
Okay. What'd you ask me?
I always ask, is it more important that the dog has the skill or the will? You want a very willing dog, or do you want a skilled dog? Which do you value more?
And I said willing right away.
Yes, I want a dog that has the will that is greater than the skill. Because if he has the will, invariably you're going to find a hole in your training somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a big thing. You don't notice that the dog is got a hole in that training until later, and now it's in use, and we went, yeah, I
Oh.
should have worked harder on that, right?
Yeah.
But if a dog has the will, he can go, I don't really have the skill for this, but I'm going to try to find some way that I can do this. So I'd rather have a dog that had the will, and that doesn't just mean motivation, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's what I tell, especially I have a service dog that I'm training now, and we were talking earlier, like this dog might be going home a little early because she's doing great. She does have the focus and neutrality, and she's willing. But I want to start the integration process. I want to bring her back home. So I tell my people, it's not what we can create, it's what we do when things go wrong, and inevitably they're going to go wrong. And
Yeah,
so, as long as we have that willingness, then we can teach that skill, or we can teach, and not just the skill with the dog, but the skill with the handler
that's
on
right.
how do we approach this situation. And I want you confident, knowing that even when things go wrong, even when we have a bad day, and guess what, even when the dog has a bad day, we're both sentient beings, so sometimes we have good days and bad days,
Yeah.
that we feel confident in our ability to be able to speak to that dog. Hey, George, love you, buddy.
George. Hey,
Yeah.
George. I found a photo of you I found a thumb drive that I have hundreds of photos, and I found a photo of you on there. So I'll go ahead and I'll send that via Messenger.
I love you, George. I think George is still laid up, and we've been chatting a little bit. And dude, he's such. If you guys, if you're listening now, and you guys don't know George Cockrell, he is one of the
He's the bomb.
OGs. Yep, and he's been in this longer than I've been alive, and so he's definitely somebody to know. So let's go to another question here that I wanted to touch on. Would PTSD then be an effect of the individual not being about to process the event, and this could cause their service dog imbalance?
Well, if I'm reading this correctly, would PTSD then be the effect of the individual not being about
Process
you mean
process the event.
I'm not sure I understand the question fully to answer. Do you understand it, Bill?
Would PTSD be an effect of the individual not being able to process the event, and this could cause? So
able.
I think that it's like able, right? So yeah, that's what
Okay.
it says. Yeah, able
Thank
to.
you.
And so it's like the person going too much in dysregulation, not being able to process the event.
Okay, so there's a difference between processing the event, let's say in therapy. That would have to be done carefully and through a series of time. So effects of PTSD, there are symptoms. There are naturally, we were going into that, symptoms, but processing the event or events is separate than the skill building that we can do between dog and handler on the side. So this actually, I'm glad for this question, because we in this Able Veterans Program, we require every veteran to remain in treatment with their clinician. They have to be in treatment to be admitted into our program, and they have to be willing to stay for at least 2 years post graduation. And that's because the traumas that dysregulated and overwhelmed the whole system in the first place and registered as something that's like they can't let it go. It's got such a hold that can be processed over time. The dog cannot wipe that away. So if I have someone, like I said, if someone is not able to process the trauma, that's something they need to do in the care of a professional that is specialized trauma-informed therapy, as well, that the dog is able to mitigate to the handler's ability to just function and continue to improve functioning. I hope that answers the question. Maybe this person could let me know if that answered the question in the way they were hoping to have it answered.
Yeah, Abizi, let us know if you have any follow-ups or if we addressed your question in a satisfactory manner. And I think that's the importance. Like, this is what I was speaking about earlier about, like, this isn't going to be the cure-all. This isn't going to be the magic pill, right? You still need to be in the setting and know that when you're working with a professional, where are you at? You're in a room where we incrementally start
so.
And they're professionals, and they know how to unbox this stuff, how to start to look inside and see, and let's bring this out. Let's look at it, even though it might be really ugly. Let's look at it together. You're in a safe space where we can have some steps in order for you to effectively process and put this together that is going to allow you the ability to see your way back.
Yeah.
Sure did. Okay, good. Fantastic. And George is still in the hospital. I hope you're out soon. I hope they figure out what's going on with that ticker of yours, and you're back to being comfortable in no time, George.
Yes, George. And whatever is putting you in there, knock that stuff off.
Yeah, the lauded or whatever. I know, but okay. So genetic stability. Now, one thing that we did want to talk about as well is when we do see service dogs, and inevitably, like I have videos that I posted, and as I'm training service dogs, there's kids. This is a really cute dog. Kids are running up to the dog. They're wanting a pet. I have to I just put like a little hand. I don't really, I found out that it's much more when I just kind of do like one of these, like a barrier between the dog and the kid. And I look up at the parent, like, come get your kid. Because I understand, like, this is a puppy that's really cute. The kid has maybe the experience of being able to go around to just about every dog that they can. And same thing, not just with kids, but with people. They have a desire to touch and pet dogs that are all around them. And so, how do we mitigate as service dog handlers, as service dog trainers? What's a way that when we encounter people that are wanting to satisfy their own self-indulgences by petting your dog when they're working, what are ways that we can mitigate that, Behesha?
Yeah, that's something. Anyone who has a service dog is going to be looked at, approached. Uh, Someone will attempt to touch your dog. Someone will attempt to engage your dog. That's it's going to happen. Um, like like many people, I believe that service dogs should be seen as, for lack of a better term, and forgive me, but like boobs. You might like looking at them, but that doesn't mean you have the right to touch them. Okay.
So great.
And so, um, if I have someone approaching my dog, first of all, I want to be a representative of service dogs everywhere because we have the dogs out all the time. That's part of the development of the dog is if you're training it, um, or even if you're training your own. The key is that remain an ambassador, a representative of service dogs because one experience with someone with a service dog can color the way they see service dogs everywhere. So make sure you're a good ambassador. Number two, if someone is looking at or approaching the dog, I don't care if they're looking. I don't care if they're looking.
Yeah.
But I do care that they don't touch the dog. And even if it says "do not pet" on the vest or "ask to pet," I always step up and advocate for the dog. Always. Now, how I advocate is for example, I have my dog. Here's my dog. And someone walks up and I can see them going, "Oh, wow, can I pet your dog?" as the hand is passing right towards the dog.
Yeah.
I'll say, "Hi, I'm Behesha," and I'll extend my hand to them. That's going to be a magnet for their hand. You might not want to shake their hand. If that's the case, if you don't want to shake their hand, I reach my hand so that I can intercept and advocate for the dog. You don't have to be touched. I'm going to advocate for you, dog, and say, "Hi, I'm Behesha or Frank or what, whoever it is. Are you a dog lover?" That's right out the gate. They're clearly interested in engaging with the dog. So asking them if they're a dog lover, it makes all the sense in the world. "Are you a dog lover?" "Oh, isn't it great? What kind of dog do you have?" That way I'm controlling the conversation without making an enemy.
Yes.
Another way, if you have little bitty children, because sometimes people don't watch their kids. And
What, I got a bunch of them.
yeah, and naturally kids do what kids do and they just want to mob the dog. That can be overwhelming for the dog. So to be able to kindly but resolutely say, "Hi, please don't touch the dog," And then I'll take a step forward, which closes the space between me and the child or children. That's going to do two things. It's going to communicate to the child, stop moving, and it's going to communicate to the dog that I'm going to advocate for you. You don't have to do anything about this. That
Okay.
way you can keep the dog, if they have become neutral by and large under a lot of situations, the dog can go, I was wondering if I had to handle that for myself, but I didn't, so thank you. Right?
Yeah.
That's from the
Yeah.
point of view of the dog. And then I can educate the kids. And if someone has a situation in specific that they'd like addressed, I'll be happy to do that if you put it in the comments. I can't see the comments, so.
Okay, I'll put them in there. And speaking of comments, George has to comment. He says boobs are good.
Yes, you just can't touch any of them that you see.
I occasionally allow Foolin to politely greet with a command, and that's one of the
Yep.
things that I do too. Is I'm like, yeah, you want to say hi, then I will give the command to the dog, say hello to our
Mm-hmm.
friend, and I will
Right.
direct them to who I want them to say hello to. So it's a good opportunity, and I've actually used this in not just service dog work, but I had a friend of mine that was having problems with getting their, I can't remember what it's called, but in French ring, to qualify a dog, the judge has to take the dog, and you
Mm-hmm.
walk and leave the field. And I had a dog that was Velcro dog to the handler, and would just either anchor down or start pulling towards the handler when he would ever leave him. And so we structured in that command as well. So to say hello to our friend, just be clear, and we can structure this in a way that if you do want other people to say hello, or to make sure that the dog understands that as well. Like, this is something that is going to happen. I also hand out cards with service dog info on them, available on Amazon. So that's something.
I've got some veterans that do that. Yeah, they've made a card for their dog and the
Yeah.
rules on the back, and they're like collecting cards. The kids love them and they learn a lot.
Yeah. And then try to keep it business-like. Yeah, but very professional. And speaking of business-like, I also say to them, oh, they're working. The dog is a working dog. And a lot of times they're like, okay, cool. But
Mm-hmm.
I tell people in my videos, and I'm documenting this process on my Patreon page. And one of the things I say is like, look, we can't control the world, but we can train our dog. And
And we
so,
can control our response to what happens, which is going to inform our dog.
yep. And I've seen it all. I've seen people snapping at dogs. I've been, hey, come here, and all this weird, and it is kind of offensive, but it's also, we can't control the world. There's variety of people out there, and that's what makes life beautiful. And with that variety comes good behavior, and sometimes it comes offensive behavior. But I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of freedom and allowing people to do what they're going to do. Excuse me. But it's also our duty to train that dog. Let me see. We have another question that just showed up here. How would you advise a trainer for someone who wants to pay for service dog credentials, but rescue dog that can't actually perform tasks, but still hopes to use the paperwork by paying to fly with the dog or bring it into public spaces? It's something I get called for all the time. I find some trainers will take the payment unethically, in my opinion, and falsely paperwork to make ends meet for their household.
I will absolutely not do that. I love that question, Robert. Um, there is a level of integrity that must be held as a professional trainer. We do not know the temperament of the dog that they are wanting to pass as a service dog. And while I understand it's nice to travel with your dog, people want to travel with it, there, at this point in time, paperwork is not necessarily necessary depending on what it is you're trying to get the dog into. For service work, the FAA has some requirements now, but there are many places that do not. And if it's brought to me, I've even been offered more money, and what would you charge? I wouldn't do it, but if I gave you X, would you be able to do it? The answer is always no.
Yeah.
I can make money in a lot of ethical ways, but that is not one of them, period.
Yep. Yep. You're trading money for morality, in my opinion. And not like that, but now, if this, yeah, your integrity is everything. And keep in mind, your integrity, your reputation takes years to build and a second to destroy. And if this dog ever has an incident where they bite somebody, they go to the bathroom on a plane, and now the Department of Transportation has a form that you have to sign on as a trainer of this dog. And guess what? Now you're attached to this dog. Now you're liable for this dog's behavior that you've never met. You don't know their temperament. And if things go wrong and they wind up in litigation, guess what? So do you. And so this is, and sometimes that can cost you a lot more than just your integrity and your reputation. This can cost you a lot of money, especially if the dog has bitten somebody that has caused some damage that can run into millions in a lawsuit, and you're part of that lawsuit as well. So, yeah. Great question. And no, I get called for it all the time. I'm like. I'm like, a buddy of mine called me, and I haven't heard from him in years. And I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Hey, I have a dog, and I need a flight here."
Dot.
Dot. And I'm just like, okay, I see how it is. Just like a friend with a pickup or somebody with a pickup always gets the calls from people that are moving. Sometimes dog trainers get called for the service dog in it. And I think that this falls into the realm of being an advocate for the service dog world. Not just are we an advocate for the dog, but we're also advocate to educate people like, look, man, you don't know what goes into training these dogs. And that's actually a good segue into what you do. And what is the process? And I put up a link to your site, you guys, or to Behesha's site.
That site's a little bit out of date, but it's still functional.
Disabled.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Disabled veteran. And so, and I remember, so let's talk about the process of, I consider prostitution. Oh my gosh, George is on the dilaudid over there or something. Of hiring out for the.
I'll have what you're having.
Yeah, totally. So, because I think it's pretty cool. So, and I also want to talk, like 2011 is when you formed this project. Yep. That's right.
I actually found a photo, Bill. I'll send it to you. I found a photo of our launch that we met.
Okay.
I'll put it up.
Okay, fantastic. I love that. And it's also, we talked about learning from borrowing our scars, right? And during this process, you've made some mistakes.
Yep.
And now we're honing it down. And one of the things that I don't think people realize is how long to get the dog out of that social maturity. If sexual maturity comes earlier, then we have social development and social maturity that comes about the 16, 18 months. And how long is the process, and what is the process of the people that you serve, Behesha?
Well, on our website, we have an application for someone who would like to apply for a service dog. We, instead of finding a dog for an individual, let me rephrase that. If I have someone who applies, I've got to know that if that applicant is considered for the program, that we have a dog that will meet that individual's needs. I don't necessarily, there you go. So we develop the dogs. Our dogs are developed over 18 months. We take them in at 8 weeks. We have had extremely reputable breeders, which we will always look for. They're lineage on service dogs for whatever breeding has to go back at least 5 generations of consistent service dog production out of those lines. And because not every litter is going to have service dogs in it, even if you've got good candidate parents. So we want to know that consistently they're throwing pups that are service dog material, at least a few in a litter. Maybe one sometimes. But anyway, we take them in at 8 weeks. We develop them for 18 months. And around that time is when we match the veteran with the service dog. At that time, for the later part of the training of the dog, we get the information on what are these veterans' particular tells. They've illustrated in the application already what they're needing, but then what are the particular tells that say the needle's beginning to twitch, they need help, maybe they start to get agitated, maybe they have mannerisms that they use, all of these different kinds of things that when they become dysregulated and start discharging nervous energy, what do they do? We train the dogs for that kind of thing. And this is what our trainers' academies are all for, to address these things, how to go into the field, how to improve yourself in the field. That's what we go into. But once the veteran has been selected, they start into we use a pre-course. We call it a pre-course. It's online. And there's 10 weeks of that before they ever get to our campus. Upon that period of time, they arrive at our campus in Southern Illinois, Carbondale, and they go through a 3-week trauma resilience program. It's every day for 3 weeks. To ask anyone who's been through the program, it's tiring. Along about midway through, there's like, oh man,
when I get myself
a nap, yeah. And but coming through, then we have a 1-year post course, and we're now doing home visits where we are able to make sure that the dogs that are placed, especially if there are children placed there, that everyone is functioning well, that there is a trajectory toward upward movement. And that's how we know that we are being successful. And speaking of that, we've been studied twice by Southern Illinois University's psychology department on the efficacy of our trauma resilience program. I think some of the data on that might actually be in the website. I know it's on some of our brochures, but most recently having been studied by Johns Hopkins University. So, and some of the studies from SIU, I think one of them ended up in the Journal of Psychiatry. Orthopsychiatry, that's what it was, the Journal of Orthopsychiatry. But yeah, the trauma resilience program has been highly effective. And that's something that we want to help educate other organizations on how to affect that kind of result. And we believe that we can do that. That's been a great motivator for us, because even if all the service dog organizations in this country or even abroad, if we all came together, if we all linked arms and we sang Kumbaya together, we couldn't hardly touch the need. But a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can all yeah, it'll challenge you. And that's the good thing. That's the good thing. Because without the challenge, if we just stay apart, our world gets smaller, smaller, smaller. Our worlds get more and more and more and more controlling. And that's because control becomes a mechanism so that feelings of fear inside us don't happen.
Yes. Well, and I like how you put just on the application here, or just when people that are interested, you're asking these questions before applying to the program. Ask these questions. Am I ready to take control of my life? Am I ready to overcome the limitations of the PTSD? Am I able to focus on the needs of and provide the care for the service dog? Provide leadership role in partnership with the service dog, financial resources to afford a dog, including veterinarian care, regular exercise, and that shows that the ability to get out into the real world, a long-term commitment to maintaining our training, and in 3 weeks of training. So you say that right away, and then PTS service dog is not the answer if you want to be identified as needing a service dog.
If you don't want to be identified
right
as someone, yeah,
right, because we need
if
to
you're
have a
worried about
disability.
yeah, well, it's if you don't want to be identified as being someone with a disability, having a service dog, just period, is going to make someone wonder, is this someone who has a disability? So if you don't want to be identified as that, having a dog is going to identify you, right?
Yeah,
Because
and bring
so,
attention to you in public. That's the
exactly.
other aspect. Like
Yeah.
if you're having a problem with that, eyes being on you. If you just want to kind of disappear in the world, guess what? Having a service dog is going to make you more pronounced in the world, and people are going to approach and stare and
I know, speaking for myself, there came a time where I knew that I could not live another minute of another hour of another day being where I was. I couldn't do it. It was too much being consumed. And what eventually it was like, I don't care what it takes. I don't care. I cannot do this anymore. And when someone is at that place where they're like, this is so hard. I'm watching my family crumble. You know, I don't even recognize myself anymore. If there's a way back, I want to find it. And I got there, I knew, and that's what we look for people who are like, I know I can't stay like this. I know.
The pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of the change.
Yeah, I think it's Anais Nin who said, the day comes when the staying tight in a bud gives way to opening, because staying tight in a bud, I don't remember her exact quote, but it became more painful than opening. For anyone, trauma is trauma regardless of, the comparisons that humans tend to make. I call it the worse than syndrome. The worse than syndrome is where it's like, well, I had it worse than you. You were inside the wire. I was outside the wire. Or, no, you had it worse than me. What am I complaining about? It's all dividing. It's all separating the worse than syndrome. And in this program, I have none of it. There is no worse than, better than. It's what happens to hit the system that overwhelms it and leaves a mark. But keep in mind, this is really important. Trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is not what happened to you. It's what happened in you. What happened to you is over and no one can unchange it. It can't be undone. But what happened in you can be changed, and you can heal from that. But it can't be undone. So what happened isn't the issue. It's the wound that what was done left. Yes. And that is something that can be addressed. And that's why I say a service dog can't save you. Never can, never will. This is your work. The dog's work, your work. And they must go like this for a successful pairing.
Well, and it reminds me too of like, it allows you to be your authentic self and to also belong. And we were talking about the grand contradiction and how this starts as even as a toddler when we're young, right?
that's the nature of the terrible twos, right?
Yes.
The nature of the terrible twos is I love you, I want you, I need you. I want to do what I want to do. And when we have parents that are attuned, they can say, yes, I understand this is what you want to do. It might not be safe, so we're going to do something else. And while you have this meltdown because you can't have this autonomy, you can stay connected to me. I don't know about many of the rest of you. That was not my family. You know, it was a choice. I want to be who I am and what I want to do, and I want to be connected to you. And I say, I want to be what I want to be and do what I want to do. And my parent goes, and I no longer have that connection to go back to and find that I so desperately need to be whole, right? Dogs do the same thing, by the way. They do the same thing. I want to go do what I want to do. I need you. And the key is that we have the ability to recognize not only in the dog and the trainer or the human and the dog, but within ourselves, that we know that there's a part of us that needs to stay connected within, and we know the part of ourselves that says, I want to do what I want to do, even if it's not healthy. And the key is to begin to bring these two things together: compassion for the struggle over here, compassion for the struggle over here, and the ability for the one struggling to be able to come back and still be connected. That is the end game. That's when trauma resolves.
Yes. That's when we start to integrate and realize that it might, we call it a grand contradiction because that's what we feel. We want to be our authentic self, but we also want to belong. So do we need to make changes that are not going to satisfy our personal wants and desires in order to appease, but instead realize that this isn't a contradiction. A contradiction is when you hold two beliefs and one of them needs to go. It's like, no, it's not a contradiction. We can integrate and
Yes,
allow for ourselves to be our authentic self and still belong.
exactly so.
And the beautiful thing about veterans is they join a platoon, they join the
A
army, where
brotherhood.
a brotherhood where when they belong so tightly that they're willing to die for one another, they're willing to throw themselves on a grenade to save another person's life. And that belonging is so, I mean, it's admirable.
Vital.
It's vital. And so when you are displaced, or when you come to the real world, and that belonging is so, that need to belong and be part of a group, or be heard, and you're not feeling like your authentic self is congruent with that, right? Or you're bringing stuff home from this
Mm-hmm.
experience, that the realization is like, look, I don't need to have this separate. Like, I can be my authentic self and I can belong, but it takes that work of integration in order to fulfill
Yeah, whole
that
life.
that whole life. That's vital for each one of us as an individual, and vital for our canine companions as well.
Yeah, our dogs have the same thing. I want to do what I want to do. I want to be connected to you. And as that was put so well um, in the Lima course, the great contradiction: dog wants freedom and choice. Um, Freedom to choose, I think. And coming back to Kashi's question, I think one of the most important things that a dog needs to learn prior to any formal training or end game training is recognizing that they have choice in what happens to them. This is so
Mm.
important. Call it the trifecta. A dog must believe that they have choice. In America, what's the one thing that we value the most in our country?
Freedom.
Freedom to choose, right? Dogs value it too. And when we are foisting upon dogs all the time, you must do this, you must, where is their choice? I want to give dogs choices. Now, I might limit the choices. You can do this or you can do that. Those are your choices. The dog can still choose, right?
Yes.
He still has a choice. That feeling of autonomy that they experience with choice really begins to lend toward um, I have choice. This is so ideal for me. Now it buys me freedom. It buys me the ability to find a way to get what I'd like. And I made a note here about this the other day. Um, Forgive me for looking,
Oh, you're
but
good.
but it allows choice as well as shucks, I mislaid my own digital note.
Do you did digital no, Behesha?
Yeah, yeah, I got about as far as I go. Um, but that ability to choose begins to lend over to now that I know that I have some choice, and now that I recognize that that informs me, I have a sense of autonomy, then I can trust that you're not going to ignore my wants and needs for being authentic. You're going to feed them. I can trust you. So the dog is going to dovetail into you more when they have that ability to choose and they have the ability to decide, and then they know that you're going to lead them closer to what they want by cooperation with you. That is what I would say is so crucial.
Yeah, it's truly a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Even though we are forming, the basis and the structure of the choices that the dog has, the dog
Hmm.
still has the ability to make that choice, and
Yes.
and experiences the consequences can be good or bad,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But there are good consequences that dog has realized now by making the choice, and that's why we want dogs too that are willing, is because now we have the trust that's built with the relationship, and the trust is the cornerstone. That's what I talk about, and not only that, but now anytime I get a service dog, anytime I get any dog, whether it's service dog or just obedience or whatever it is, rehabilitation. First thing I'm doing is taking and building a relationship based on trust. And before I start implementing commands, because now that we've got trust, we start to develop rapport. And I tell people
Hmm.
rapport is power, right? That's something that um, is crucial. And I think a lot of times, especially with compulsive behavior or compulsive type of dog training, can be detrimental to the relationship if you don't have
Yeah.
that trust first.
Yeah. And dogs so often can't predict the consequences of their own behavior.
Mhm.
And so being able to present this or that, um, and not in the moment where you're at a crucial moment, right? We've got to build this symbiotic relationship up. And so we build them up for the crucial moment. For example, you can be drowning and know that you're likely to be going down. That's not the time to take the lesson. That's not the
Yeah,
time. Can one of you guys teach me how to swim here? You're in survival. You can't even, take it. That's why people get drowned by drowning people. Um, and so we must build up the ability to swim, in this case, metaphorically speaking, for the dog. They've got to be able to accomplish these layers of training in order to have them when they need them. And you can't rely on what the body does, back slanted, butt on the ground. You can't rely on a body position for a dog that moves into dysregulation, because while they may be able to do that, the body and the mind are connected. And getting a dog to simply do this does not do anything for the chaos that's going on in their mind. The key is to help them stay regulated, grounded, and when we ask for a given behavior, they associate that. I go into this a great deal in the academy, the difference between a command and a physiological state. They are different things. Where in the brain any behavior originates matters. You must know where in the brain that behavior is originating, because you can't go into this body posture when you're in that state. They must know that what a sit actually means. It's not about the posture. It's about the mind state and the ability to regulate their own system. That's what it's about.
Okay. And this is where I think that what I call foundation work, right? This is where we start getting into the foundation work. And this is what it's about. That's what that means to me, is like, look, this isn't a sit. This isn't, focused heel or whatever. This is how we come back to a reflexive
stasis. Yeah.
Right. Right. Homeostasis, right? Like stasis, right? Where this is when things start to go wrong. Let me tell you something, because now we're venturing into something that is uncertain, unsure. Let me tell you something and that you can be sure of. And so once we have that in place, then we can come back to the foundation and then start to give the dog some sense of security with something they know in an unsure, new environment or new activity that's happening in the same environment that might cause uncertainty. So now we have certainty that we can introduce in an uncertain environment. Does that make sense? Am I correct?
It makes sense to me, and it's a way of there is chaos out there. There's something that could be triggering for you out there, but what you do know is that you have now learned to move yourself out of the chaos into a mind state of, I see it, I'm not part of it.
Yes. And chaos and order is a natural rhythm of our world. We're going to encounter chaos.
Yeah.
Whether it's a school bus. I remember I was out working with a dog in the middle of a field, and it happened to be a baseball field. And guess what? 3 school bus full of children came to come play their baseball games. And in a matter of seconds, we had hundreds of kids running around that field like crazy. Right. And eventually I got the dog out of there. But I'll always remember that moment. From 1 second, it was nothing. And the next second, it was sheer chaos.
And you can't prepare a dog for that if you haven't had little exposures all along the way of what that looks like.
Yeah. And guess what? Even preparing that dog doesn't mean, it reminds me of when they train police and military, right? Like, just because we're at boot camp and just because we're out on the range and shooting these guns and going through the obstacle courses,
the drills,
right? It's never going to be the same as if somebody's really shooting at you.
That's right.
And the auditory exclusion, the visual exclusion that happens. And I've talked to a couple police officers, and they've been in shootings. And I remember one time this officer like basically pooped his pants. Like, it was something that you could in the real world, things are going to happen. And I mean, I'm sorry but that's what's coming to mind, is like, look, you're not going to do that on the field, but when it became real, and and even though you prepared yourself for this, things are going to happen on the autonomic responses to keep you safe that might not be desirable.
Well, we've seen it in the dogs, right? You got the dog, he's walking through the store, it's new to him, and lo and behold, he leaves a deposit.
Yeah, and I think that it's I see it in hunting dogs too. Like, they get out there on the field and they get so excited, and I think that
adrenalized.
Right. It's meant to make the body more of a capable of flight, because now we're dropping this package. We're lighter, I guess, but we're also expressing any toxicity or
Yeah.
cleaning out our system to encounter this in a more satisfying way, I guess. And I can't believe that that's what we're talking about, but that's basically what happens. Like we can't foresee how we're going to respond to a real world event, even though we've had simulated training for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, our conversations seem to wander, Bill. 1 minute we're talking about boobs, and the next minute
We're talking about pooping our pants. But in with the horse world too, right? This is something that we've gotten into, but we can save that for another. I want to have another conversation with you at a future date on my Patreon page,
Okay.
and we'll get more into the nuances. And I'll announce to my Patreon subscribers, and I put a link in the comments, you guys. We'll get into some of the nuances of the training, maybe the program that you do in the 21-day period, and also ways that we can qualify and know what we're looking for when we start to select these service dogs.
Yeah.
And you are a 501c, correct?
501c3, yes.
Or C3. What's the best way if people want to support you? Do you do fundraisers? Do you
Yeah.
all donation supported? So you are 100% donation supported, right?
So we have been the recipient of a grant. Grants vary all over in size. They can be $500, they can be more. And so we have gotten support from a grant. The remainder all is donations. And we've had donations from, I call it blood money. It's where someone's deciding they're not having breakfast cereal in the house for 2 weeks because they're going to send the money in here. And then there are others who have it on like an annual support every month. There's support every year. And we have some groups that have been very loyal, and we've had the VFWs hold fundraisers. But at the end of the day, the majority of our funding historically has been donations. And anyone who's interested in, perhaps they work for a company that has a donor program where you can volunteer an organization to be, get what is they have, I don't know how to describe it, Bill, help me out here. What is it when, let's say you've got Walmart, they have a fund,
like an affiliate train or reflective training organization that they support, right? Or
like let's say you've got Boeing Airlines, and they have a foundation which they support organizations that they believe in. What do you call that?
I don't know.
Some of our listener out there is going to go, it's called this, and I'm going to go, oh yeah, that's it.
That's what. Well, and it's important to know that you are nationwide. You're located in Southern Illinois, but this is and I put a link to your website, and you're going to be rebuilding the website. But if you know somebody, send them your way, and then also
and veterans, if there are military veterans that you know of that not only need the service dog, but also really would benefit from a trauma resilience program, they feel free to point them this way. There is no cost to the veteran, no cost for the dog, cool. No cost at all. So,
and then you have do you have a way of maintaining contact, and these people?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you have some stories. We'll get into the stories and stuff on the Patreon. We'll go further into this. We have one last question. This is the last one I'm going to take. Wouldn't a counterpoint be muscle memory, which is why we train?
Yeah, there's many kinds of muscle, right? We have our physical muscles. We also have our focus where our focus goes, right?
Mhm.
That's its
Energy
own
flows.
muscle, right?
Well,
Yep.
energy flows where focus
Ways
goes.
of thinking, like negative thinking is just a muscle, you know.
Hmm.
And so if you have someone who's leaning over to negative thinking, that muscle can be trained to lean in another direction, a more proactive direction. So muscle memory is crucial in training. Um, and so with that, which muscles are you developing? So in answer to that question, muscle memory is indeed a big part. Too often we want to spend more time on what the dog is doing in training rather than what we are doing within in our own training, and which muscles are we exercising? Are we exercising the part of us that likes to quit, or are we exercising the muscle that pushes us out and gets us a broader picture? So there's physical muscle, there's focus. Your attention is muscle.
That's right.
That's
And
what
then when
we develop it in the dogs, right?
totally.
Puppies, they focus on everything.
Yep. And then when we do the exercise, that's our external, but sometimes we need to go inside and we do the inner size. So we do exercise and inner size to
Yep.
develop and to form different muscle memories and
Yeah.
and change ourselves for the
I
better. And it's uncomfortable, but it works.
I've got some people that are listening from my side, and one of them said, what are the dates of the academy?
Okay.
And the PTSD Essentials Academy is September 14 through 27 of this year. And our PTSD Advanced, which is a school you have to qualify for, is 10/17 through 26.
So, say the first one again.
9/14 through 27, 2025.
Okay, 2025. I'm going to put them
And
in the comments down below too.
yeah, that's the PTSD Essentials course. And 10/17 through 26 of 2025 is the advanced.
10/17.
Yeah, that's the PTSD Service Dog Advanced.
And then through the
6.
10/26, and then this one it needs to qualify PTSD Service Dog Advanced.
Trainers. Yeah.
Service dog. Here, I'm going to put dog trainers and qualify.
Yeah, on the website, they can just go in and say, get notified. The dates, I think, are out of date that are on there, but they can go ahead and just say, get notified of the next ones. And then we can send them information.
Okay, I put that there, and 2025, that's fantastic. All right, there we go. So I put that up in the comments, you guys,
Okay.
and then I am going to let's say goodbye to everybody, and thank you, Behesha, for your time. I'm going to say goodbye to you real quick in the studio, but thank you all for watching another episode, and please share this. And
I wish I could see everybody who's on here. I'd love to give a shout out. I can't tell if you're here or not, so maybe just shoot me a message or something.
Okay.
Let me know you were there. I'd love to make some connections again. And again, George, I'll go ahead and send you the photos that I found and get those to you, and get well soon. All right, George?
Get well, George. Love you, buddy. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.